Where does healthy confidence end and sinful pride begin? Wonder Woman and Mr. Terrific are both crossing that line, but only one of them might be able to admit it. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. That's your first and only warning. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 22nd, 2025, and originally published on September 24th, 2025. First up is Superman number 30. Now, this continues a story pitting Superman against this evil, twisted version of the Legion of Superheroes, made so by Darkseid in some way. That's all kind of coming together in the events of DCKO. But this also brings to a close, seemingly, Superman's interaction with Superboy Prime, who he has temporarily teamed up with, but was betrayed by at the end of the last issue. Well, in this issue, it turns out to be kind of a double cross, because then Superboy Prime turns out to be ultimately on Superman's side and against the evil Legionnaires. I still haven't gone back and read kind of like, I think it was the Dark Knight's Death Metal something whatever crossover that supposedly Superboy Prime was involved in, and there was kind of a pivotal moment where they started restoring him kind of ish to a good guy, but at the same time leaning more into his kind of meta psychosis or fourth wall breaking business. Certainly more of that is going on, and it actually kind of confuses me even more as to whether or not to see him as a sociopath or actually as the only character in the DC universe who actually is real. The pivotal moment comes when there's a shift from what I've seen in the past of how Superboy Prime is written. Up to this point, when they lean into the idea of him being from kind of the quote-unquote real world, they do that in these kind of broad ways. For example, when in one pivotal scene, when the evil Saturn girl is kind of going off and spouting and just talking evil for a while, of course we all know that as monologuing. Well, Superboy Prime says that and with a little evil smile says, I love evil monologues. And so he's definitely written to be this character who's aware of these meta-realities of fictional writing, of comic book writing. But they take a turn in this issue of Superman toward the very specific in terms of his meta-knowledge. There comes a key moment where Saturn Girl turns to Superboy Prime and says, kill Booster Gold. And of course we think, yeah, he's totally evil. He's totally going to kill Booster Gold. In fact, to use some mildly rough language, he says in the next panel, Dan Jurgens is going to be pissed, so pissed, when he's walking up to Booster Gold preparing to kill him. Or at least it seems that way. Now, for some reason, I just was not expecting to see the name of a DC Comics writer come out of Superboy Prime's mouth. That all the more enhances his meta-knowledge, his real-world knowledge, in a way that I just was not expecting. Now, I'm guessing, because I didn't do the research, I'm guessing that he specifically calls out Dan Jurgens because I assume Dan Jurgens maybe created Booster Gold. I think he was created in the era when Dan Jurgens was really first coming on the scene in a big way. Or maybe he was really known for writing. I think he had a run on Booster Gold, at least more recently, since his kind of backstory was changed a little bit by Jeff Johns. But Dan Jurgens clearly has a strong connection in the publishing world to the character of Booster Gold. But him being called out, I mean, this moment took Superboy Prime almost out of the pages and sitting right next to me with the kind of thoughts that I might have, like, oh man, the writer who really was known for writing this character is going to be ticked off if his character is killed in the DC universe. And to some degree, I think that's what readers would feel. And so all the more Superboy Prime is being put into the seat of the reader. Now, I think it was speculated, and maybe this was actually proven to be the case, that when Superboy Prime first went really dark and evil in the events of Infinite Crisis, at that time he was being used to represent toxic fandom. That's at least what I read on a Wikipedia page. I don't know if the writers have actually come out and said that. But right now, even though he's acting evil, this isn't a sentiment from necessarily toxic fandom. This is just from fandom. Like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill this character. The person that was really known for writing them is totally going to be ticked off. And that's understandable. So it's weird. It's weird. But he does, we find, actually not kill Booster Gold. He turns out to be on the side of Superman. So can he still potentially be treated as a non-villainous character? Well, I mean, as he observed in an issue or two back in this story, pretty much everyone, if not everyone, that he killed in the past has been brought back to life. And so can we really feel all that sore about him? Obviously, in terms of actual morality, yes, he was still guilty of murdering those people. But as a fictional character, do we have as much reason to really be unsettled with the idea of him becoming not a full true blue golden hero, but some kind of a messed up anti-hero type that does a lot of good things? I mean, can he at least settle into a place of comfort with readers on that level as that kind of character? Maybe, I don't know. It's so weird. It's hard to think of him as villainous, as guilty of like killing characters when there's a sense in which he brings out the fact that these are all just characters. And so can we really get upset with him? I don't know. I'm finding it a very interesting experience to read Superboy Prime right now. And even though it looks like he and the Lost Legion at the end of this issue are kind of going out in a blaze of glory, it's not clear if they're actually dying or not. It kind of fades to white. So I'm guessing that we're supposed to feel a sense of closure about their fate right now, but I hope and actually would assume that this isn't the last that we see of Superboy Prime. Speaking of meta moments, next up is The Flash, number 25, which brings the Bad Moon Rising arc to a close and seemingly also brings Simon Spurrier's run as writer of the book to a close. The promotional materials for the next book, it looks like Mark Waid is picking up this series, or at least the next issue, which is I'm all for. I've not been enjoying this Spurrier run as it's really gone into some weird sci-fi territory that I can be open to, but not when it's at the cost of running, at the cost of doing things fast. I mean, I love Flash to explore different ways of applying super speed, but not with the absence of actually doing things super fast. And we've seen a lot of that, unfortunately, happening in this run, where there's lots of weird sci-fi stuff that has to do with the Speed Force going on, but at the cost of a lot less running and moving fast. Now, why did I mention the transition into, the still being relevant to meta type writing? Because at the end of this issue, Wally West is sitting down with his wife, Linda, who is a writer, and they're talking about something that she is writing. And Wally says to her, "Say, honey, don't you think this stuff's a little out there for your readers? Temporal dilation, gods disguised as dogs, the illusion of individuality, etc., etc. Are you really expecting them to get it?" And then she kind of changes the subject. But this strikes me as being maybe some recognition on the part of the writer that some readers will not appreciate what he's been doing with the book. Maybe he's been getting enough feedback to know that they haven't. I actually don't know how this book has been received. Maybe it's been largely very well received. He's had a run that's lasted long enough to think that, people haven't just totally been rebelling against it. But maybe at the very least, this is a recognition that some people will not connect with his writing. If that is the case, if I'm reading this correctly, then the way he's characterizing it is to say that the problem is his readers aren't getting it. They aren't getting the concept of temporal dilation, gods disguised as dogs, the illusion of individuality, and so on and so forth. And it's not that I would have trouble following those kinds of ideas. I like some crazy, mind-bendy ideas, as long as it's internally logically consistent. I haven't been following this story long enough to know if that's the case or not, but at the beginning, when he was going all weird and trippy and stuff, I wasn't losing interest because I didn't understand. I didn't get the concepts that were being put out there, or not even necessarily that I didn't appreciate them on a sci-fi level. The issue for me is that's not what I come to The Flash for. I come to The Flash for a guy moving and doing stuff at super speed. And there was a massive reduction of that in Simon Spurrier's run. And so I am glad to see this period come to an end. It's been remarkable to me that I have not been reading The Flash on a monthly basis, because for the longest time, The Flash has been probably my number 2 character in all of the DC universe, right below Green Lantern, at least in terms of character concept. There's certainly books that at times I've enjoyed much more than any Flash or Green Lantern book that I've read. But in terms of character concepts, characters I like, their powers, I like to follow what's going on with them, The Flash has got to be number 2. And I checked out of this run and was very sad for that to be the case. So I'm ready for Mark Waid, or frankly any other writer, or even if Spurrier wanted to stick with it and just change into a different mode, I would have been ready for that, you know? So it's nothing personal against even his writing style. It's just this is not what I come to The Flash for. So, glad that we're moving on. That's all I have to say about The Flash 25. Just a little bit to say about Green Lantern 27. This is the penultimate entry in the Starbreaker Supremacy storyline, which is going to be finishing, I think it's in Green Lantern Corps number 9 next. But John Stewart definitely gets kind of a big moment, a seemingly self-sacrificial moment where all of this power that he's gained, which I would have thought would have dated all the way back to the Mosaic run, but there's actually been a story arc since then, much more recently, in which he was infused with a bunch of power. So at least a couple times he's had all this innate power infused in him, and he implies that he's kind of like letting it all go. He's been keeping it in check for a long time, finally going to let it all go. And then he seems to disappear once he's done that, making us, I think, assume, or the characters assume, that like he has passed away. There's no way John Stewart is dead. No way. So it's like I didn't even feel the weight of that moment, because just from a meta level, if we're going to stay with a theme of meta, then I know John Stewart's not dead. But it was still interesting to kind of let him have this uber powerful moment. There was also a continuing recognition that the construct generation of his departed sister Ellie is not real, but the construct itself does not seem to be aware of it, or doesn't seem to manifest or play at an awareness of it. It depends on what your headcanon is about these things. And Ellie even gets what looks like a blue ring at the end of this issue. So clearly we're not done with Ellie yet, but at the same time, John is saying and alerting readers to the reality that this is not his sister. He realizes that. And I think if we read between the lines, we're meant to understand that he does not see the voice of his mother inhabiting his ring as truly his mother either, but we haven't seen all that completely play out. I would almost wonder if he hadn't already had a miniseries so recently, if this wasn't going to lead into maybe another miniseries with John Stewart. I feel like there's stuff that still needs to be dealt with what's going on with him. So hopefully we'll get some further development and then resolution, and something that feels like a fitting, appropriate, ongoing status quo for John Stewart. Definitely feeling unresolved at this point, but they leave him in a place suspended in who knows where, that probably is a convenient place to put him until another writer has a real vision of what to do with John Stewart. So my suspicion is that's what's going on at this point. Moving on then from Green Lantern 27 to Batman in Detective Comics 1101. This is the beginning of a new story arc that is leaning into the detective part of Detective Comics, where a large ship, runs off course, slams into like a pleasure yacht, and all of these dead bodies are discovered to be in the water around this larger ship, to be on the ship itself. All the people on the ship died of mysterious causes. Batman is there investigating it, and it's got a cool vibe to it. I guess I'm not necessarily always down for just a murder mystery, which is, I guess, when you think of detective stories, that's typically what you think of first. And this, I'm sure we'll be able to follow it all the way back to a mass murder that's somebody's fault. But to come to a scene here where this strange biological thing has happened, I almost get like body horror monster movie vibes where he comes on the scene of something that happened that caused all these people to, their bodies to decay rapidly, and they were evidence that they were acting crazy before things went south, almost like stepping into the aftermath of a zombie story of some kind. Anyway, it's clearly not going to be like an actual zombie type story. We learn just enough about the infection or whatever this is for that to be the case. But by the end of the issue, we also find that, and I kind of called this one, but Bruce is infected. And so that gives a sense of intensity, of course. The clock is going to be ticking before he dies and his body decays or he goes nuts or whatever happened to these other people. So, but there's something about just the opening of this with all these mysteriously dead bodies and Batman trying to figure out what's going on that does have me hooked in. And of course, giving it personal stakes, even though we know Batman's not going to die, giving it personal stakes that will probably increasingly put Batman's mortality, his human limits on display. Those are always great Batman stories when he's really being pushed to his human limits, something that we can relate to in various ways. So as of right now, I'm very much on board with this new story that just started in Detective Comics 1101. Finally, last two comics, starting with Wonder Woman 25, we've got this sort of interesting wrestling, dancing around, exploration, what have you, of pride or self-confidence. I think that oftentimes pride is considered a good thing in our vernacular today, the way we use the word pride. You gotta have pride in yourself, and of course there's like pride parades and all that kind of stuff. You guys know about that. But there's ways in which the word pride is used in a positive sense, and sometimes I feel like it can be used, and it's not really harmful. If you're going to be proud of a job well done, to look back and be satisfied, I think is the better word. To be satisfied and pleased with what you've done. To be happy with the result of your efforts. I think sometimes people will use the word pride to describe that, and I think in that sense that can be just fine. That can be actually God-honoring because we are made to be productive. We're made to do and to accomplish and stuff. But it's when identity gets wrapped up in those accomplishments, in those achievements, that it becomes this sinful pride. And if you do a word search in the Bible, and most any English translation, pride is by far a negative thing in every, if not almost every case that you're going to see it in English translations of the Bible. Anyway, the word pride isn't necessarily coming up in Wonder Woman 25 and Mr. Terrific Year 1, number 5, but I think we have instances in which both of these characters have a sense of self-confidence that may be okay, it may be fine, but they also have moments of self-confidence that seem to be taking it too far and stepping over into arrogance. In a moment where there's conflict and a big fight type thing going on, and Wonder Woman goes under the water and they don't know what happened to her, and one of these girls starts freaking out. And remember, this is the story where like most of the people in this world, this land that Wonder Woman is visiting, all they know how to say is mice have ears and the mouse man knows. They just keep saying that over and over again, which by the way, I'm so done with. It makes it hard to read these issues. But anyway, this girl panicking is just repeating this phrase, mice have ears, mouse man knows. And then Wonder Woman says, emerging from the water victorious suddenly, yes, well, whatever he knows, he does not know me. Which is this, I mean, I get it. It's a cool moment, but it's also kind of a weirdly self-glorifying moment, I would rather someone else be in awe of Wonder Woman in this moment and saying something like this about her. Like, whatever the Mouse Man knows, he doesn't know her. And that would be a cool moment. But for Wonder Woman to be saying this about herself, he does not know me, is weirdly arrogant feeling. And historically, I do not think of Wonder Woman as an arrogant character. Well, she doesn't stay in that arrogant place. She's written actually more like the Wonder Woman I'm used to and that I can respect. and admire a little bit later when she comes to the conclusion that she has gotten in the mix of a situation she should not have, that it is not her place to get mixed up in this situation, or at least she feels like she is maybe doing more harm than good. She's getting ready to leave. The people plead with her, no, you need to stay and fight. And she says no and turns away. Behind her back, she is called a coward. And then after a beat of silence, she says, yes, I am a coward. Those people in your hole are dead because I am afraid, because I am undisciplined, because I did not listen when I should have, because I traveled here when I should not have. Then she has tears running down her face a moment later. She says, my apologies, young one. I should not have yelled, or it is not your burden to bear. It is mine alone, tears streaming down her face. And so just this moment of humility, whether or not in the complexities of the situation she did contribute some to the situation or not, I think we can set that discussion aside. But for her to just be in this place of humility is a welcome counterbalance, where she has these moments, perhaps, at least the way she's written here, of self-confidence that maybe does step into arrogance. I'm okay with my characters, my heroes, being flawed in comic books. But it's the question of, do they know which traits of theirs are flaws? Does the writer know which traits they are giving these characters are flaws and which are virtues? And so that's not completely clear to me if I would agree with the writer in every respect on what parts of Wonder Woman's character in this are virtues and what are not. But I do appreciate that there also is room for her to show regret, for her just not to be this fully arrived, fully formed. I suppose some people would use the expression girl boss. I don't like using expressions like that because people use them differently and they're loaded and whatever. But I mean, like, this fully formed character that has nowhere left to go, that is not who Wonder Woman is in this issue, even though there is a moment that at a glance would make it seem like she's being written that way. So, as I've said before, I think I'm ready for a new writer to take over this book, but I do appreciate this little bit of flaw being allowed in Wonder Woman's character in this issue. What's a little more puzzling to me is how Mr. Terrific is handled. Mr. Terrific, Year 1, number 5. This is a story that is kind of showing the first year as he's figuring out being Mr. Terrific. There's some stuff going on in present day as well. But in the very first page is where we see an example of why I find Mr. Terrific a very interesting character to read and to see how writers will write him. At the very beginning of this issue, he says, you have to understand, this is his internal monologue, you have to understand, at the foundation of who I am is knowledge. And that we could stop right there and say, wow. So right there, he is so identifying who he is with the knowledge that he possesses. He is finding, I think this is an identity statement, he is finding his identity in his intellect, in the knowledge that he has acquired or that he applies in what he does. Mr. Terrific, also a very outspoken atheist as a character, and when operating philosophically from a purely naturalistic worldview, this makes a lot of sense. That, like, one's identity is entirely wrapped up in their output, in what they produce, do, accomplish in life. That is where our value comes from. It's not value that is intrinsic to us. I don't think you can derive that from a completely naturalistic worldview in which everything just happened by accident and has no purpose, objectively speaking. But in some sense, if you're going to look for purpose, or if you're going to look for value specifically, if you're going to look for significance specifically, you're going to look for things that have a larger impact, a larger ripple effect on other things in the natural cosmos. And so for him to say, at the foundation of who I am is knowledge, is very consistent with his worldview. It's also very consistent with the pride that he is given as a character that at times is kind of like a humorous vice, where it's not taken too seriously. We recognize kind of that it's a flaw, but it's delivered in kind of a lighthearted, jokey way that we don't really think about it too much. less often we see it as a flaw that actually is acknowledged. And I think in this very same page, in an indirect way, we do see that his pride is a shortcoming. Right after he says that the foundation of who I am is knowledge, his internal monologue continues and says, and being back at the palace of eternity, the place where I had learned everything I thought I knew was, the place where I had learned everything I thought I knew was wrong, I felt utterly lost. So he is admitting that there is a ton that he does not know. In fact, the way he describes it is everything I thought I knew was wrong. And as a result, he feels utterly lost. And so, yes, when his entire identity is wrapped up in knowledge, and then it turns out that he has incorrect knowledge on a ton of things, he feels utterly lost. And I think that the same thing happens to all other kinds of people when they are basing their identity in something that they shouldn't, that their identity is not actually objectively found in, like career, like sexuality and gender, or the kind of the sex that they are attracted to, or what they accomplish in life, or what a good parent they are, or what a good Christian they are. Yes, Christians can do this too. When something comes along and shows that, like, oh, there's an inconsistency, that, like, actually what I thought was true about my identity is wrong, I've been mistaken about this, then we can feel completely lost when we're basing our identity on the wrong things. And sometimes basing our identity on the wrong things will also keep us from seeing the truth to begin with. Hey, at least Michael Holt is able to recognize when he's wrong about something. He feels lost and shattered as a result, but some people who base their identity in the wrong things, they can't bear to feel utterly lost. And so instead they choose to believe something that's false. Now, of course, these are just reflections I'm bringing. I don't think any of this is intended to be reflected on in the writing here, but it just happened that these ideas were both being expressed on the same page, on the very first page. I found them very striking, given my knowledge of Mr. Terrific as a character, how he's been written in the years leading up to this point. Well, but then that moment of subtle, indirect, unintended humility on Mr. Terrific's part kind of gets washed away by the climax of this issue when he's up against kind of like the big bad that he's really been wanting to go up against in at least as for a major part of the story. He says to him in his moment where he clearly now has the upper hand, he's clearly giving a beat down on this bad guy. He says, but you taught me a lesson I didn't get till right now. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I am yours. So, by the way, speaking of villainous monologues, now we got a heroic monologue that, in a similar way, is a bit prideful. He goes on to say, after kind of whacking him around and beating him up, as long as people and forces like you exist, I'm going to be there for the little guy. Whacks him again. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to fight to make a more perfect world. Oh, isn't he so humble for saying he's not perfect? You know? I'm not perfect, but I'm going to fight to make a more perfect world. And then he whacks him some more. Fair play in these fists, right here, right now. Wham, again. You know why, Cormorant? And the guy's at his feet. And then we cut to him and he says, 'cause I'm GD Mr. Terrific. Now, this line was also in the Superman movie this summer as kind of like a punchy moment for the character that was humorous then, as I think it's meant to somewhat be now. And it's in a moment of victory where clearly, as readers or as audiences in the movie, we have to acknowledge, dang, this guy's really capable. This guy's really smart. We have to kind of agree with the idea of him being talked up in this moment. Yet at the same time, it's him talking himself up. I'm GD Mr. Terrific, you know, as he stares down kind of at the reader a bit in this art. Now, again, this is maybe played for comedy. I don't think it's as obviously played for comedy here as it was in the movie. And maybe the intent is not that it be taken comedically at all, but that it be a serious moment of victory and we're supposed to think to ourselves, yeah, you know. I think for good reason, and I've got this underlined in my Bible, Proverbs 27:2, a proverb I need to remember and meditate on, says, let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. There's just a tendency for us to want to talk ourselves up. And I think it comes back to our feeling less about ourselves than we should. And so we're trying to conjure up and establish this identity for ourselves. But the truth is, the identity we have already intrinsically, without talking ourselves up, without accomplishing anything, is far greater than anything we could conjure up, anything we could manufacture. We are made in the image of God. Every single human being is made as an image bearer of God. That gives us incredible cosmic significance. And then add to that, just to cement that truth, that God became a human. He valued humanity enough to live as one of us, to die horribly for all of humanity to have the opportunity to accept the free gift of forgiveness and everlasting life. If that doesn't speak to our value, I don't know what does. We can't possibly add to that. And any attempts on our part to add to that cosmic value and significance we have been assigned by the creator of all reality, it is just kind of ridiculous on our part. And when we are secure in understanding our intrinsic worth and value, we don't need to talk ourselves up. We can live in this stable humility of recognizing our value and not need to have others see our finer points and our finer qualities. And I think that's just a much better way to live. Anyway, always an interesting character. That's Mr. Terrific, Year 1, number 5. This week I am wearing the orange lantern ring because of an awesome moment in Green Lantern 27. Let me jump to it. In this big moment that John Stewart's sacrifice makes possible, where the various lanterns in the color spectrum are restored, they all get their rings back, and they're saying their different oaths. The red lanterns say, "With blood and rage of crimson red, ripped from a corpse so freshly dead, together with our hellish hate, we'll burn you all, that is your fate." And the indigo lanterns are babbling in their indigo language. The blue lanterns say, "In fearful day, in raging night, with strong hearts full, our souls ignite. When all seems lost in the war of light, look to the stars and hope burns bright." And then the yellow lanterns, who have taken Sinestro out of the oath. This is the first time I've ever seen that. They say, "In blackest day, in brightest night, beware your fears made into light. Let those who try to stop what's right burn like our power, burn like our might," instead of Sinestro's might. And then, of course, the green lanterns, "In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light." And then on the same splash page showing all of these oaths, we've got Larfleeze, the single orange lantern, because the orange spectrum represents greed, avarice, and so there's only one because he keeps it all to himself, except for all the constructs he creates to kind of fill out the orange lantern core. And I don't know if Jeremy Adams just created this oath on the spot right now. Maybe he never had an oath before, but all these nice rhyming oaths are then followed up with Larfleeze, who says, "What's mine is mine, and mine and mine, and mine and mine and mine, not yours." Which, oh man, I read that. I just busted up laughing. Good times. Love it. It's very rare when entertainment hits my funny bone, and especially in comics like this. That was a great, great moment. So that's why I'm wearing the orange ring, because of the great laugh that Larfleeze gave me this time around. And I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, love getting your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, if you want this content as a monthly podcast, you can get it. It's just called the Essential Issues a DC Comics podcast. You can find it on probably any podcast service. If it's not on the one you use, let me know and I'll try to get it on there. But anyway, lots of other content for you also at christiangeekcentral.com. Go check it out. Making stuff for you there as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.